Some of the tofu sold in the market contains formalin as a preservative. They meant to extend the storage time for food, especially for tofu. One of the findings is in the capital city of South Sumatra province. Formalin is a chemical solution that is often used by people as preservatives of dead bodies in funeral homes, medical labs, and many more. Borax is a boron-containing compound that is unsuitable for food additives because of its toxicity. However, it has long been used in food, including tofu.
Greetings, I'm Ella.
And I'm Jesselyn. We're from SMA Cita Christian School are presenting the fractal dimension to determine the existence of formalin and borax in soybean curds. The first mathematician who found fractal was Mandelbrot. Fractals commonly used to describe many disordered and irregular objects. It can be in many objects around us. They usually have the property of self-similarity. Fractal dimensions indicate the complexity of fractal objects. Tofu itself is a fractal since it has many holes. Therefore, we will use the fractal dimension to identify the difference between tofu with formalin, borax, and without any additive.
Research methodology. In our experiment, we have two ways to count the dimension of tofu. The first one is by measuring the mass and diameter of squeezed tofu, and the second one is by box counting method. But before we do that, we made our own tofu out of soybeans to make sure that there is no formalin and borax. The initial conditions must be the same, and after that, we added the formalin and borax. The first method is finding the mass and diameter method. In this method, we first cut the tofu and record its size. Then cut another tofu with half and a quarter of the size of the first one. The next step is to fry the tofu and squeeze it into a spherical shape. Record the mass and diameter of the tofu. Finally, find the natural logarithm of the mass and diameter, then plot it in a graph. The next method is the box counting method. First, we cut a piece of tofu in cuboid, then fry it and cut it in half. We also measure the size of the fried tofu, then take a photo of the inside of the tofu and insert the picture in a Word document. We resize the tofu by 4 times its original size and convert it to a black and white picture, where the black region represents the holes. Place grids of size 1 times 1 cm, 0.5 times 0.5 cm, and 0.25 times 0.25 cm. Then, we count the number of white boxes and calculate the log of the number of white boxes and the scale factor. Lastly, plot it in a graph.
The observed dimension. The fractal dimension for both methods are obtained by finding the gradient of the line. We are using this equation where the number of boxes n is equal to the proportional constant k times the scale factor s to the power of the dimension d. And by using the law of logarithm, the equation will be shown like the last equation. When y is equals to log n, m equals to d, x equals to log s, and c equals to log k, the equation can be written in the form as y equals to mx plus c. And with the help of the linear regression of the Microsoft Excel, we can get the linear equation. So here's the results and analysis for the first one by finding its mass and diameter method. Non-additive tofu. In this part, we didn't put any additives in the tofu. As you can see from the table, we got the natural log or ln of each of this by using a calculator. Then we graph it. The linear regression of Microsoft Excel helps us to get the exact linear equation where y equals to mx plus c. Then we can substitute it with the value from the table. Since m equals to d, the fractal dimension equals 1.71. For the tofu with borax, we did the same thing as before, and we got the fractal dimension equals 1.66. And for the last one, which is the tofu with formalin, we got the fractal dimension equal to 2.08. Bigger diameter will lead to a bigger ln diameter, which makes the graph steeper and hence increasing its gradient. Since the fractal dimension must be between 2 and 3, in our analysis, there must be an error in measuring the diameter since we were unable to squeeze it into a perfect sphere. The diameter that we encountered must be shorter than it's supposed to be for 1 grams and longer than it's supposed to be for the 4 grams of tofu.
The next one is the box counting method. Here we can see the gradient of the line of the graph of non-additive tofu, tofu with borax, and tofu with formalin. For the fractal dimension of the tofu without additive, it can be seen that the gradient is 2.01. And since m is equal to d, so the fractal dimension is 2.01 as well. Tofu with borax, from this graph, we can see the fractal dimension is 1.89. And the fractal dimension that we got in this graph for tofu with formalin is 2.12. From the results shown, it can be seen that the graph of tofu with borax is the least steep, therefore has the lowest fractal dimension compared with the other, while the graph of tofu with formalin is the steepest, which means that its fractal dimension is the highest. However, some results shown have a fractal dimension that is higher than what is supposed to be. A higher number of boxes will mean bigger log n. Miscounting or overestimation might be the factor affecting the result to be higher than it's supposed to be. From our analysis, a lower number of boxes in the scale factor of 4 or higher number of boxes in the scale factor of 1 will decrease the gradient of line, and so is the fractal dimension. In conclusion, the fractal dimension can be used to compare tofu that has different ingredients and additive, in this case, borax and formalin. From our experiment, we figured out that formalin has the highest fractal dimension of all. Meanwhile, borax has the least fractal dimension in this experiment. Hence, the fractal dimension can be used to determine the existence of formalin and borax in soybean curds. Other than the limitation we mentioned, there are some other limitations, such as that we only collect one data for each variable. Therefore, a more accurate result is going to be analyzed in the future by increasing the variables and repeating the experiment for at least 5 times to collect more data. The experiment using borax, formalin, and non-additive tofu must be conducted all at once to prevent inconsistent results. The universe is fractal. Whatever energy signature we carry will be repeated infinitely, again and again, until we change the vibration.